Welcome to the Story A Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy from storyaday.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie here from the Story A Day podcast. I have had some really interesting conversations with other writers this week. Without betraying any confidences, I'm going to share some of what we talked about because it really all played into what I've been thinking about and writing about and talking about for a while now, as I've been working with people in the Story A Day world, just really trying to, one of the first things that I focused on as a sort of mantra for myself here was putting the cart back behind the horse, right? Not having the horse before the cart and trying to get published before I'd written a lot of good stuff, and not worrying about the publishing end of things before we actually worry about the writing end of things, if we ever worry about the publishing end of things. So some of the conversations I was having this week were with really accomplished writers, not newbies, not people who've just been doing this because they love writing, but people who've gone pro, people who have made this their job. And it turns out that, as with any job, there's a lot of bad with the good. So you still have to deal with deadlines. You have to deal maybe with a boss that isn't that great. You have to deal with industry practices that maybe aren't that great. So, for example, I know people who are up against deadlines, and yet they're getting very little support from their publishers. I heard from two different people this week about stuff like this. You know, they are, in fact, more than two. They are expected to produce a lot of books and a lot of great quality content, and the publisher deigns to publish it. But really, when it comes to the marketing, they are offered little or no support. And sometimes they are offered less support for later books than they were for earlier books. And that's a little bit of a shock to someone who, you know, we all think that as we get more successful, as we get more practiced at this, as we release more works into the world, that all of that nonsense is going to go away. But it turns out that not always, but sometimes the jobby parts of being a writer are like any other job. There are things that are discouraging and things that are disappointing. And I'm not saying this to discourage you, because obviously if you have work that you want to get into the world, the traditional publishing industry or the indie publishing route, these are things that you might want to learn about. But just, I wanted to mention it because what I see happening is these writers who are, like I say, very accomplished, very experienced, and not just experienced at writing, but experienced in the business part of writing, they start questioning themselves and they start questioning their worth. And a lot of their energy goes into that instead of into the writing. And I think so often people who are not professional writers, professional fiction writers, think that the stamp of approval from a publisher is going to make all that insecurity go away. And it doesn't. So I'm going to continue to encourage everybody to do the work on that stuff here and now, so that if you decide to go down the publishing route and that works out for you, you will still not be placing your sense of worth in the hands of somebody else, especially not in the hands of someone else who sees your work as a product that is going into their business to help them make profit, which is all fine, except if we attach worth to those things. It's very easy to be dispassionate about, how many t-shirts you sell at the Disney store this week. It's not as easy to be dispassionate about how many copies of my baby, my intellectual heart that I put on the page and packaged in a book, how many units of that sold this week, and whether or not the publisher is going to buy my next one. Those kinds of transactions are a little harder when it's our intellectual work we're talking about. And we just can't get our worth, our sense of worth as an artist, from other people's decisions, especially when it's a business, a transactional relationship. So what am I saying? Am I saying that you shouldn't listen to anyone? No, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to anyone. Obviously, you can't just go out there and write whatever you want and be completely disconnected. We are connected, we're humans. So you can't just pay attention to what you think and feel about your writing, but you have to know who to listen to. And sure, if you want to go pro, professionals are looking at your work in terms of what's selling now, what's hot in the market right now. And none of that has anything to do with how good a writer you are or how good the story you're telling is. If you are writing on last year's trend, it's just going to be that much harder for you. If you are a published author and your last book didn't sell that well, you're just that little bit less exciting to a publisher who's got to make money. So who should you be listening to? Well, a good place to start is with other writers, particularly other people who are writing the same kinds of things, who understand you, or who have just been doing this for a while. For example, I was at lunch today with my critique partners, and I had sent them a bunch of pages that had taken me. These are the pages I've been talking about on the podcast. This sequence that I was trying to write about this big scene where my character has to do something stupid. And it was really hard to write because I was trying to write it as a single scene, and it turns out it was a whole sequence of scenes. So I finally got it done, and I sent it off to them. And one of my critique partners was trying to be very nice, and she said, that moment when he does the thing, I just wasn't, that was the only thing I wasn't 100% sure about. I wasn't sure if he was going too far or if he wasn't going far enough. And she was trying to say in a very nice way, it didn't quite work. Just that bit, it just didn't work. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I knew deep down, my instincts had told me it wasn't right. But I didn't know why it wasn't right. And I didn't know if I was overplaying it or underplaying it. And then, so as we talked, there were three of us there, and as we talked about, what they thought was going on in the scene and what they had questions about, what I realized was I was nervous about putting the audience off by making my character show his flaws. And so I kind of rushed through it. I rushed it. Also, I've been working on this dang sequence for so long. I was like, I gotta get this finished and send it to them. So get it off my desk. So I knew this difficult piece. I kind of knew deep down that I had rushed it. Not the writing, but the actual scene, for the amount of build-up there was and the amount of stuff that's going to come after it. The actual moment where he's showing his flaws in all their glory, I just kind of put him on a stage and made him do it, and then we were done. And in this discussion with my writer friends, with them asking questions and saying, well, I thought this and I thought that, I was able to see exactly what I'd done wrong, which I couldn't have seen myself. I just didn't know if I was making it too ridiculous or if I was not making it strong enough. But their reflected view of it made it clear to me that what I need to do is expand this never-ending scene even more, which is fine because it's going to be more in proportion now. I just have to make sure the pacing's going. But what I thought was interesting was that it was only in the discussion that it became clear to me what I needed to do. And they didn't tell me what I needed to do. They just flagged it and said, yeah, this didn't quite work. But I said lots of other nice things about other pieces of it as well, so I felt very felt very good, because you never actually see you sort of take the bits that go well, you take for granted, and it's really useful to have people say, oh, I really like this bit, so that when you start revising, you don't accidentally revise out the good bits. We can't exist in a vacuum for these reasons. It just makes it so much harder to write if you are in that position of, I just don't know how this is going to hit with an audience. I was very lucky to be able to work with these two lovely ladies who I've been working with and writing with and reading with for years. And their questions were very, very helpful. So that's going to sound like a massive setup for what I'm about to say next. But I swear to you, I came up with the topic of today's podcast on the way home from my critique lunch. However, the fact is that this is a critique month here at Story a Day. I do critique weeks with my Superstars group 3 times a year, and sometimes each session fills up, but sometimes we have a few places left over. And I want to invite, if you are looking for someone to get eyes on your work and you've got a piece that you're just not sure, is it working, is it not working, I'm going to invite you to come over, follow the links in this podcast, and come over and have a look at what I'm offering in this month's, this season's critique week. We do, as I say, we do it in October, February, and July. And basically, you can submit a piece of writing, either an excerpt or a short story or multiple microfictions, and have people give you feedback on it. 3 people will read your work. You will read 3 people's work. I try and read all of them. We leave comments on the documents in a shared folder. We get together in live meetings and have a chat about all of the stories that each group in the critique week. I split people up into different groups, so it's not like one massive class, but each group gets together and chats about what came up in the discussions and the comments, and it's just an absolutely wonderful group of people who are willing to read your story really deeply and ask you questions about it. What were you trying to get at here? I don't quite understand this bit. This is gorgeous. I think it's this, like the discussion is so, so valuable. And this isn't just me saying this. The participants always rave about this group. Most of the times when I get to post somewhere on Twitter or hear that somebody in the group has published a story, an awful lot of times it has been through our critique week, because it just gave them the confidence and it gave them the insight into how to tweak and polish the story. It gave them a sense of how the story was hitting with an audience, that they could see what needed to be cut and what needed to be strengthened. And I'm delighted to be able to invite you in. As I say, most of the spaces in Critique Week will be snapped up by the Superstars, but there will be a few for people from the wider Story a Day community. So if you are on the Critique Week waiting list already, you'll be getting an email from me on Sunday. If you want to get on that waiting list, then hop over to the link in the description for this episode and have a look at what's on offer and put your name on the waiting list. And then on Sunday, I'll send you an invitation, and whoever gets those last few slots, it will be a privilege and a joy to read your stories and chat about them. The meeting, the critique week itself runs from Friday, October the 14th to Monday, October the 24th. Yes, I know that's 10 days. My weeks are expansive. What can I tell you? I grew up in Britain and we're metric. No, I'm kidding. But it's a little expansive. You upload your story on the first Friday. We start the discussion meetings on the next Friday. There are 3 different slots that you can elect to be one of. If you can't make it live to the discussion meeting, that's fine, because we do this asynchronous commenting as well. And I will record the discussion meetings and we will discuss your story even if you can't make it live. It's always a lively discussion. It's always a very positive and constructive discussion as everybody in there is reading your story closely, because it's teaching them things about their own writing as well. So if that's of interest to you, follow the links. I certainly never regret sharing my stuff. I certainly had a great experience today where just that question of, I wasn't sure if this was too much or too little. My critique partner echoed what I was feeling, and I was kind of trying to get away with leaving the piece as it was. I was kind of hoping that my version of it that I'd written, that I deep down suspected wasn't as good as it could be, kind of hoped I was going to be able to skate by on that. And she just highlighted the fact that, not that it was bad writing, she wasn't destroying me. She was just like, I just wanted something. And so that gives me my work for next week. So, as well as setting up this critique week, which I hope that you will opt into. Don't be afraid. We do not expect perfect pieces. In fact, it's kind of annoying if somebody submits something that's really, really good, because then we don't know what to say about it, except this is really good. So if you have something, it can be in any stage, just let us know. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking now, because you should be writing and I've got to get back to my writing and setting up this critique week. So if you want in, follow the link. Again, to recap, do not let anyone else dictate your worth as a writer. You are a writer. You have stories to tell. It's important. I hope you're celebrating every victory, getting to your desk, opening your manuscript. I hope you're taking some time to rest and get outside and walk if you can, or just, breathe, stretch. Don't forget to blink when you're staring at those computer screens. And suddenly I've turned into like your mother. So I'm going to stop now, and I hope you have a wonderful writing week. And yeah, keep writing. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week. And of course, keep writing.